A torn tent flap catches the wind, its canvas fluttering like a wounded bird. Snow whirls around the ragged edge, catching the dim light of a waning moon. You stare at the last entry in the hiker's journal, each shaky letter pressed hard into the page, the graphite leaving a deep scar in the paper. The ink is smeared by frost, the words, "We are being watched," trembling under the breath of the storm. What drove them to whisper that warning in ink? By the end, you'll see that the truth behind this phrase reaches farther than anyone imagined. What happened to the 9 experienced hikers who set out for the Ural Mountains in February 1959? By the close of this narrative you'll understand why the Dyatlov Pass incident still haunts investigators a half-century later. The Ural Range rose before them, a wall of pine and stone that promised a hard but non-technical climb to the summit of Mount Otorten. Igor Dyatlov, the group's leader, was a seasoned mountaineer who carried a small, battered pocket notebook where he recorded weather patterns in cramped, looping script. He was also known for brewing tea over a tiny stove each night, the aroma of black tea mingling with the crisp air of the base camp. Beside him walked Georgy Krivonischenko, a student famous for slipping a harmless practical joke into every break, a cracked egg in a teammate's boot, a mismatched pair of gloves, and for constantly tapping the end of his cigarette with a silver lighter, a habit that left faint soot smears on his fingers. Together they led a crew of athletes and outdoor enthusiasts from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, each outfitted with thick parkas, sturdy canvas tents, and plentiful rations. But within 6 hours, they would be dead. What unseen force could unravel a preparation so meticulous? The first scene unfolds in the bitter night. The wind howls through the trees, shaking the thin metal poles that hold the tent upright. Inside, the air is thin and cold, the breath of the hikers forming clouds that cling to the fabric. Suddenly a muffled gasp slices through the silence, followed by a shuffling sound as someone pulls at the inner wall. The canvas is ripped from the inside, fibers tearing like paper under a blade. Snow rushes in, coating the interior with a cold, white foam that coats faces and hands alike. The tent collapses, and the group stumbles out onto the slope, their boots crunching on fresh snow, eyes darting toward the dark forest beyond. Their panic is palpable, each footfall echoing the frantic beat of their hearts. The darkness swallows them, and the night stretches on, relentless and indifferent. One hiker, Lyudmila Dubinina, is later found with a missing tongue, the wound slick with frost, while others bear strange, patchy burns that curl like orange wilted leaves on their skin. In the snow-scarred landscape, bodies lie scattered, some half-buried, some twisted in unnatural positions, as if forced into a pose by an invisible hand. Their faces are frozen in expressions that shift between surprise and terror, eyes wide as if still watching something beyond the reach of sight. If you want to see where this goes, hit subscribe, because what comes next changes everything. The Soviet investigation that followed catalogued the scene with methodical precision, noting the lack of external trauma on the bodies despite the severity of internal injuries. Broken ribs and fractured skulls lay exposed beneath the skin, yet the corpses showed no bruises or lacerations that would suggest a struggle or an animal attack. The only clue to the frantic departure from the tent was a faint, lingering scent of ozone that clung to the snow, a faint metallic tang that dissolved as quickly as it appeared. Igor's journal entries, initially brimming with excitement and anticipation, begin to fray as days pass. He writes of clear skies and firm footing, then his ink wavers, his sentences turning erratic. He mentions mysterious lights flickering across the ridge, a soft hum that seemed to rise from the very rocks, and whispers that carried on the wind like distant voices. Georgy, ever the prankster, records a quick joke about ghosts in the snow, scribbled between notes about the route, his humor a thin veneer over the growing unease that settles like a cold blanket over the campsite. As the group climbs higher, the atmosphere grows denser, the air thinner, the silence more profound. Some report seeing strange, pulsating lights that dance just beyond the tree line, colors shifting from green to violet, their glow reflected off fresh icicles. Others describe a low, resonant thrum that seems to vibrate through the soles of their boots, a sound that feels less like a noise and more like a pressure against the chest. A faint, oppressive sense of dread settles in, as if the mountains themselves were breathing, exhaling a warning that the hikers cannot decode. Everything changes when the legend of the Devil's Footprint is invoked. Locals have long spoken of large, human-like prints in the snow that appear suddenly and disappear without a trace, the edges crisp yet impossible to match any known animal. These footprints, sometimes arranged in a circular pattern, suggest a presence that moves with intent, leaving a trail that defies logic. The hikers may have unwittingly stepped into a realm where the natural order breaks, a place where footprints appear without a creature to make them. The truth behind the hikers' last days may not be a single mystery but a window into a deeper, more unsettling reality. The final images that emerge from the investigation reveal a landscape still holding its secrets, a place where the cold wind carries whispers of something that has never been fully explained. Theories swirl like snowdrifts in the valley below. Some point to secret Soviet military experiments, citing the faint radiation that lingered in the area, a subtle glow that could have been emitted by undisclosed equipment. Others suggest a yeti, a creature of folklore, whose massive footprints could match the Devil's Footprint tales, though the lack of hair and the clean edges of the prints argue against such a being. Still others turn to the paranormal, pondering whether an unseen force could have driven a group of rational, educated men to abandon shelter in a night of sub-zero temperatures. What will you do with the truth, if you ever find it? As the investigation deepens, the notion of an unknown radiation field gains traction. Instruments left at the site recorded a faint, persistent glow that was not consistent with natural background levels, hinting at a possible hidden source, perhaps a military testing ground long since erased from maps. This hypothesis fuels speculation that the hikers may have stumbled upon a clandestine site where experimental technology was being trialed, the energy emanating from devices they could neither see nor comprehend. Another thread weaves through the story, the hidden cave system that stretches beneath the slope. Explorers who have later navigated the region describe narrow tunnels that open into chambers lined with mineral deposits that emit a low, steady hum. Those who entered the caves report a disorienting sensation, as if their perception of time falters, and a sudden, sharp headache that seems to emanate from the rock itself. If the hikers had entered such a space, the combination of low temperature, radiation, and acoustic pressure could explain the bizarre injuries and the instinctive flight from the tent. A local guide, known for his keen observations, recalled seeing the group arguing fiercely a day before the tragedy. He describes Igor's voice, once steady and calm, now clipped and urgent, as if he were being driven by a purpose beyond simple adventure. Georgy's usual grin was absent, his jokes replaced by a quiet, focused demeanor, a small detail that hints at an underlying shift in the group's dynamic. These pieces suggest that the Dyatlov expedition may have been more than a casual trek. It appears that the team was prepared for a specific, perhaps covert objective, their equipment chosen not only for survival but for data collection. The strange lights and sounds could be the byproduct of experimental devices, their emissions interacting with the environment in ways that produced both the luminous phenomena and the physical trauma observed in the bodies. The evidence accumulates, each fragment sharpening the image of a planned, yet secretive, mission gone catastrophically wrong. The group's behavior, ripping the tent from the inside, fleeing into the dark, the unnatural injuries, begins to align with a scenario where exposure to an unknown energy source forced them out of their shelter, their bodies reacting violently to a force they could not resist. What then becomes the final, unsettling detail? The investigators never found the source of the radiation, never uncovered a hidden facility, and the official report remains vague, describing the incident as unexplained. The lingering scent of ozone, the precise pattern of the footprints, the internal injuries without external wounds, all remain as silent witnesses to an event that refuses to be fully categorized. You are left with a single, stark question that lingers in the frosty air: what other secrets lie hidden in the Ural Mountains, waiting for someone to stumble upon them? What will you do with the truth, if you ever find it?